So let's start this. I would like to now call the Longmont Housing Authority Board of Commissioners regular meeting to order. Can we have a roll call, please? Chair Joan Peck.
Commissioner Sean McCoy.
Commissioner Diane Christ.
Tim Hall, Assistant City Attorney.
Harold Dominguez, Interim Executive Director.
Sarah Lee, Public Safety.
Lisa Gallagher, Regional Manager.
Kendra Daniels, County Supervisor.
Commissioner Shikiriako.
Commissioner Aaron Rodriguez.
Commissioner Marsha Martin.
Commissioner Hidalgo Ferring.
Thank you.
Back row. After
Just have people in the back.
Oh, yes.
Chris Palma, Program Manager of Recovery Cafe.
Jennifer Jepson, Executive Director, Recovery Cafe Longmont.
Okay, you're here for public invited, you heard?
No, they're here for an item.
Oh, for an item.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to make a request to move it up.
Excuse me. First item on the agenda is the agenda revision and submissions of documents. Do we have any?
The only one I'd ask is that we move the Recovery Cafe from 5D to 5A.
Okay.
That way we can get them out here early.
Get them out of here.
Do you need a motion for that?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. I just involved it.
We're now at public invited to be, no, we need to approve the January 16th meetings.
I move January 16th meeting 2024 minutes as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner McCoy, seconded by Commissioner Christ to approve of the January 16th minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That passes unanimously. We are now at public invited to be heard. You have 3 minutes, and please state your name and address. Is there anyone from the public here that would like to be heard?
In the hall.
I don't think so. Seeing none, I'll close the public invited to be heard. We are now at old and new business. The first item on that is the Recovery Cafe programming at the suites.
Yeah, Commissioners, we asked the Recovery Cafe to come in and present to you all today. As you will recall, they did receive CDBG funds looking at a facility, and we've been working with them to build a facility adjacent to the suites. Unfortunately, because of the LIHTC property, there were issues in terms of the Recovery Cafe being able to get financing because the ground lease was a problem, and working with the other investors. And talking with Recovery Cafe, we continued to proceed with Recovery Cafe still being involved with providing additional resources to the individuals that live at the suites, specifically related to recovery. One of the things that we know about the individuals that a number of individuals at the location is that there are individuals that are struggling with recovery, and recovery, I'll let them talk about, is more than just what we think about in terms of alcohol or drug recovery. Recovery is a much bigger definition. And so, I don't want to steal too much of their thunder, but we have, since the beginning of the year, we brought the Recovery Cafe out to participate in coffee and conversations with me at the suites, where we introduced them to the residents of the suites in terms of the services we're going to provide. And they've been working out there. I don't know how many times you all are out there now. So I'm going to turn it over to them to talk about where, what we talked about, where we've come from, what we're doing. One of the things that I have decided to do, just based on the call volumes that we're seeing from Bleeding Core, is I am going to use some of my city manager contingency, because I think we're seeing more interest in this than we thought. And so we'll use some of that really to help provide the supply for the group. So Jennifer, Chris, I'll turn it over to you now.
Great. Is this the best spot for us right here? Or do you want us to stand or?
You can come right here in the middle.
Where
do you go?
Yeah, it might be better if you move around over here.
Okay.
And if you
Well,
need chair,
Chris does a great pose. There's video somewhere of that.
Oh, no.
Thank you so much for having us here today. I'm just going to give you you a little overview of Recovery Cafe Longmont, just because I'm not sure where everybody sits on knowledge about that. So I'll just bring us all to speed. Recovery Cafe Longmont, we're part of a larger network across the country. So we're one of 65 cafes across the US, and we are the only one in Colorado. So what we have discovered is that the cafe is such a unique and special, has such a unique and special flavor that is so different than so many other programs that are offered. We like to say someone goes to treatment to day 30, to 30-day treatment, where do they go on day 31? So we get to offer a place for people to come, and we like to say this is a place to come and be. And so it's a chance for people to come. We offer a fresh meal every time we gather. We gather 5 days a week. We are in the basement right now of Central Longmont Presbyterian Church. We've been there now for 4 years, or we're coming up on 5 years actually. And so we're just so grateful to be there, ready to move on out. And so we did the feasibility study at the suites and determined that was a little bit too much for us. So we're moving forward, but one of the things that we said we would do is let's consider some programming at the suites and take this show on the road. So we're kind of looking at the suites, or we are looking at the suites as a pilot program. So, you know, brick and mortar is expensive and it's tricky. And so how do we take these services from not just where we are downtown, but to the suites and beyond, and into Boulder County as well. So we are a community of refuge and healing for people who are in recovery. We like to say everyone's in recovery from something, so that means everyone is welcome. We typically, though, work with a population that is at the intersection of housing insecure, substance, alcohol use, trauma, and mental health. That seems to be where most of our people are coming from. We have a membership model. It's a free membership. And we like to, we believe it's important for people of this population to belong to something, to have some ownership. So we ask 3 things of our members. Number 1 is they participate in keeping in the life of the community. So we'll ask them to do some jobs around or read our guiding principles. The second thing we ask of them is that they attend a weekly recovery circle. That is an opportunity for a group of up to 10 to 12 people to provide accountability for one another, to check in, to see how they're doing with their goals. And those are led by our peer support specialists. And then the third thing is, what am I missing?
Be sober in the space.
Oh, yes. We need to, we ask that they are substance and alcohol free in this space. If someone comes to the door and they're altered, we may ask them to come back another day, just so we're not triggering our members. So it's a pretty simple model. And so the second thing I talked about was recovery circles. So this is what we want to do at the suites, is offer programming. So we'll offer a recovery circle to people at the suites, and then we want to mimic, or not mimic, but have the cafe in the cafe space there at the suites. I'll let you go.
Yeah, so SAMHSA, which is the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration, they identify 4 pillars of recovery. Like, what are the 4 things that really like get you into like sustained long-term recovery? And that's health, home, purpose, and community. And you know, the people at the suites, and you guys have done a fabulous job of getting that health and home, right? Those are like 2 very key things. And I think where Recovery Cafe can really help is with purpose and community. So, you know, people come in and we have our meal together, we have our recovery circle, and then we do community building activities. And we've been over there twice now, and we still have another one to go. Just kind of talking with the community, seeing where they're at and what they'd like to do. And that's been really getting a really good response. We spoke with 20 residents so far, and a lot of them have identified, you know, just feeling kind of lonely or disconnected, but very grateful for where they're at, and like acknowledge like they've been on a journey. You know, a lot of them were unhoused and really struggling, and now they have a house, and you know, they have a few friends there. So we're hoping to really expand that and offer some classes that can offer recovery capital, and also just some fun, right? Just to get to know each other. So when you're walking down the hallways, you know your community and your neighbors. Yeah. them all we got.
Yeah, so we've been working on this since about January, and Chris has done 2 listening sessions that he just mentioned. You've got a 3rd one planned.
Yes.
And then our plan is to start weekly on Thursday nights from 4 to 6, 4:30 to 6:30?
4:30 to 6:37.
Yeah, 4:30, 6:30, or 7, starting March 7th, and doing that weekly. And then our hope is that if we see some growth, if our recovery circle gets to that 12 mark, then we'll add another night of programming in another circle, hopefully.
And, talking with a lot of the residents there, a lot of them are on their recovery pathways, like maybe you're familiar with harm reduction, they've stopped doing a lot of the things that maybe kept them on the streets or struggling, and, but they're not quite there yet. So I feel like, the population is really ready. Like when they see us there, they're really happy that we're there, and they said, we need something like you here. And a couple even wanted more recovery specific support. So that's like different groups or 12 steps, and that's, I think, something that we can also help connect with, the recovery community even outside of Recovery Cafe. So.
Are there any questions that you might have for us?
Thank you
Yeah.
for all your work.
Yeah.
It's so needed.
Yeah.
And everywhere, we're very fortunate that you're here in our city.
Yeah, we love it too. It's fun.
It's great.
Yeah, and I wanted to bring them in because I think what we're seeing, and Sarah and Lisa can chime in, this is really part of the work that you all approved in the budget in terms of the clinicians and everything that we're doing, because it's hard for us to ride the manager line, and we know we need to do community building. And so in many cases, what we found is we've interacted with residents across multiple properties. This is partnering with local organizations to really help us. And the community building really actually will move us to success faster than if we just try to do it on our own. And so, we partner with Recovery Cafe, we partner with the Center for People with Disabilities now. And so the whole point of this is to provide resources to the residents of our properties to help them be more successful in the long term. And it's been interesting to see. I just think when we look at the number of people they've already communicated with, many of those are people who would necessarily communicate with us. And the work and the partnership has actually put us in a better position in terms of working with DOH and how we're looking at tenant selection now for the suites, because based on the investment that we're putting in, whether it's the city, the housing authority, or community partners in this, they've actually allowed us, and we're working on shifting the tenant selection plan. So instead of coming from the state one home plan, we're actually going to be able to pull people from coordinated entry of Boulder County, which many of the folks you may be working with, public safety is working with in the even poor, so it's really allowing us to house individuals in our community that need it, so we can continue moving them down the journey of becoming housed, becoming stable, and then potentially being able to move out of permanent supportive into other housing options. So, this is the beginning of it. We've actually started talking. If it's successful, we may need to look at other properties because we know the same issues exist in some of our other housing authority properties.
I have one more thing too on that note. So all the staff that will be going to the suites, all our peer support specialists, and what that means is people with lived experience. So a lot of our staff even have used some of these resources in Longmont, right? And so you're getting to speak with someone who's been where you're at and has walked in those shoes. So that really helps build connection, build buy-in, and it's just a great thing. So. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks for
So
having us.
this, so I do have a question. So in this, this was in our packet, the program, your programming. So you have not, this is what you are planning, envisioning for in connection with the suite. So have you implemented?
No,
this?
that's
Yeah,
what we
okay.
start in March.
You start in March, so that's what I was wondering. But these are all the steps, so the first hour, second hour cleanup, that's all part of your normal process in your other
Yeah.
facility.
Yeah,
Okay,
and this will all be subject to change because
Okay.
it's such a unique
Yes.
venue compared to what we do now. And so we're just gonna have to really play with it and determine how do we stay true to our membership model
Uh-huh.
and do it in a place where everybody's living.
Yeah.
So that'll be fascinating.
And that's part of why we brought them in with our coffee and conversation. I wanted
Yeah, me too.
them
Thank you.
to see the interaction that we have with the residents and what we're doing, to really kind of start getting a sense of, you know, the different types of relationships that we have with the facility.
And that was really good for us to see what
Yeah.
the population is and then and some of the needs. And to really realize like, oh, we've got to maybe have more than 2 people,
Yeah.
right? We're going to have to really make sure we have our peer support specialists ready to go.
Mhm.
And so we can make this successful.
And, you know, I often wonder how many folks who are at the suites, you know, make the trek over to where your place is in downtown.
Yeah.
And then, and you know, and I think about, you know, anybody who's in crisis, you know, you're on fight or flight mode.
Yeah.
You're not necessarily have the wherewithal to go find
The bus stop.
these, yes,
Yeah.
well, and find where you are and what you
Yes.
offer. And
Yeah.
so I think, you know, it's so key that you are having a presence there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's-
Thank you. And that's really what we're hoping to replicate across
Mhm.
the county if we can.
Mhm.
So thank you for letting us,
Yeah.
thank you for being our tester subjects.
Guinea pigs.
Yes, yes. And why would we want to recreate the wheel?
Right.
It's already
Exactly.
here.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So it's great.
Well, and we may come back to you all and say, as we look at Lashley Street Station, or we look at Spring Creek and Fall River, Aspen Meadows, we may want to say, maybe we do something here at these facilities, but maybe it's not limited just to the people that live there. Maybe we open it up to the broader community, because
Yeah, that makes sense.
what we're seeing is and Sarah can talk about this, there's a lot of interaction between the residents in our housing authority properties and residents in the community. And, you know, something that's sort of been niggling is, I don't want to be in a position where there's somebody in the community that could need assistance and, oh, just because you live here, you can't do this.
This happened today. One of our favorite people, is it Vivo?
Vivo.
Yeah, he moved over there and he said, I'm sorry I haven't been here. He's like, it's just so hard for me to get here now. And I ran over to Chris and I said, oh, when we're at the suites, can we invite
Yeah.
this friend of ours? And he's like, I don't think so yet.
Yeah.
So, and for obvious reason, we totally understand, but it does, I love that you brought that up because I think the community is integrated, not just in the building, but across.
Yeah.
And we did see a few people who have come to the cafe and, you know, maybe when they weren't living over there, were coming to the cafe. And
Yeah.
it's like, you'd be amazed how, you know, and speaking about like getting Longmont people into, you know, Longmont supportive housing, like that's building community right there because people know each other quite well.
Yeah.
It's, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Good night.
Yeah.
See ya.
Yeah.
Sorry we can't stay for the whole time. I wish you well. Right, thank you.
so much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. That was great. So now we're on the LHA goals 2023 accomplishments and 2024 focus areas.
So, because we're not yet far enough in our dashboards, you all have this as part of your packet. I still can't figure out which one is the right one. There we go. I'm obviously not going to go over every bit of this with you all. But you can see this as we're looking to the future. But I wanted to hit some highlights in terms of what you'll see in the accomplishments. So, you know, the first one is Molly and team was able to really work in stacking 3 federal funding sources. So if you remember, we had the voluntary compliance agreement with HUD that was actually created prior to the integration with the city. Many of those were capital improvements needed for ADA accessibility of the properties. And so we've completed all of that work based on utilizing CDBG funds, ARPA funds. What was the other funding source? I'm drawing a blank. Anyway, there's a third federal funding source, and so we're able to do it. We have identified some other projects that we need to make additional improvements on, but we're working to find. That's like hand railing being put in certain spaces. Once we corrected the first issue, it opened up another issue. So really making progress on all of the ADA accessibility issues on all of our property. We sold 615 Main, which was the property for Center for People with Disabilities. That was the agreement that, I think the value of that, based on what we're seeing, is around $650,000. We reduced it to $500,000, but then they're going to continue providing services to individuals with disabilities who live in the housing authority properties. They're also going to come in and do some training for residents and just start moving through all of our properties and working with us. And that was important because one of the things that we found as we're still financially, we're making improvements, but we also don't have the financial resources to provide a lot of these programs on our own. So really the augmentation of Recovery Cafe, Center for People with Disabilities, is really bringing more resources to the residents of our communities. We have restructured some supportive service positions to better serve our residents. So we had a resource specialist, and what we found is that the challenges that the resource specialists were dealing with were beyond a resource specialist, and what we really needed was clinicians to be on property because, Sarah and I have talked about this a lot. When I look at, I think you all talked about it in the pre-session with the library in terms of the types of people dealing with. What I will say is, it's not just the library, that's basically every operation that we have these days in terms of the types of individuals that we're working with. But when I really look operationally, many of the situations that our staff deals with, primarily a permanent supportive housing, but we see it at all of our properties, is really more akin to what police deal with on the streets on a regular basis. So as part of the budget, we restructured to have a clinician one position at the suites at all times, and then you all directed the marijuana funding for 2 other additional clinicians that will help with all the housing authority properties, but community issues. And so we're getting ready to hire those positions. Obviously the meth detectors, Sarah will talk about that. We've worked with, a new meth cleaning company to reduce the total cost of meth contamination. We've updated the property tax exemption policy to make LHA ready for income averaging. The Adrian House, which is a city-owned property, the agreement's been complete. It's rent ready now. We're continuing to make progress on the LHDC asset transfer. Spring Creek is almost complete. We were able to bring in purchase city vehicles so that we could handle snow plowing internally versus paying contractors in excess of $200,000 a year to do that. You may hear complaints. We're still working on that in terms of fine-tuning it, but we're making progress. It seems like every storm we get a little bit better. In terms of the 2024 focus areas, and looking at LHDC, there's a component where in order to keep their tax exempt status, they have to accept donations and really become a charitable arm. So we're working with the LHDC board to become the charitable arm for the Longmont Housing Authority so that people can donate money, furniture, things like that into LHDC. So then we can provide that to individuals who move into our properties and in many cases don't have much beyond whatever they're carrying their clothes in and a couple of other things.
We didn't try to make a focus on money though, because sometimes people give stuff that we practically have to throw away. So money is always best.
Yeah, and so obviously we're going to be pretty picky. It's kind of like when you look at emergency management and the philosophy that's in my head is when you're in emergencies, donation management is the second emergency that you always deal with because of that very issue.
Yeah.
And so we will be very specific, and it may be that the group that talked to you all at the retreat, home ahead, that there's a partnership there, but primarily financial. I talked to Erica and Kendra. One of the things that we found in our citywide community giving campaign campaign is that many of our staff members will tend to give to organizations that are directly related to the mission that we're all trying to accomplish. And so next year, we'll move LHDC into that donation, and it meets the tax exempt because it comes from the city, then into that, and then so that helps us deal with that issue. We're working with the Humane Society Partnership for low-cost behavior training for support animals. Again, not all properties allow animals. All properties we have to allow support animals, and so we are dealing with some animal behavior issues in different properties, and so working for that training as a component on it. We're also going to be working on a homeownership readiness pipeline for Project Mustang as it's getting ready to come forward. So when we think about the residents that live at Aspen Meadows neighborhood, which are the townhomes off of 21st, those are individuals that may be the most likely to be ready for home ownership, so we're going to start working on that. In addition to all of it, and you can see more of this, we're still in that development pipeline in terms of the projects getting ready to go. So Christmas is going to open up, and they may be releasing now. They're releasing now. I think it'll be completely ready by mid-May. May or June. Zinnia is on track to move forward. And then we're shooting for a closing on Ascent on all the property and the development agreements by June, and that June we'll start construction on that. We're also having some really interesting conversations about 121 Main that I'll be bringing back to you all in terms of some different opportunities to financing and potentially ownership. So we have all of this ongoing, but we also have a lot of development continuing to move in terms of providing housing in our community. Be happy to answer any questions for you all.
I was wondering, because you mentioned animals, I had asked you several months ago about having Millie and Annie come in and address.
They are actually at the suites, and they're going to do some vaccine clinics there.
Perfect. Well, that shortened that conversation.
I believe they already have one scheduled, so.
Good. I guess,
I was gonna ask about that too.
yeah, would it be, and I guess this is up to the board to decide, would it be helpful if they came in like Recovery Cafe did and explain what they do and why? Would you be interested in anybody here? Yea or nay?
Sure.
So
Not
maybe at
opposed
some
to it.
point
Sure.
when we don't have a huge schedule, we could have them, if she really wants to.
In addition to that, so Lisa's also working with Kaiser Permanente, where they're coming in and doing programs for the residents at different properties. I'm starting to have conversations with UC Health and LUH, and we're going to get together in terms of what they can do to come on property and provide some additional resources to the residents of our
Great.
communities. So there's just a lot right now moving in what we're trying to do.
The Senior Advisory Organization has been failing to get that kind of outreach services going for years, especially with Longmont United. And is it possible to get the senior center staff moved into this?
Yep, we will. Part of what we're trying to figure out is just, it's definition of what we're going to do. And similar to what you saw with Recovery Cafe, start small, understand it, and then see how we can start expanding it. But yeah, definitely.
Okay. Resolution 2024-04, adopt employee on-site unit occupancy policy.
I'll be presenting on this one tonight from Raleigh. So like other housing property management companies, LHA has designated units for employee occupancy that are allowed through our property management agreements. Benefits of this include fostering positive sense of community with the residents, enhancing the safety and security, and keeping a close eye on condition of the properties and prompt response to urgent needs. The proposed establishes rules and expectations for employees living on site. If approved by the board, the policy will be in place for new placements in employee units. However, LHA does currently have staff living on site, so therefore, some of the aspects of this policy that would require compliance at move-in would not be applied retroactively. So our recommendation is adopt a resolution for approving the employee on-site occupancy. And the fiscal impacts are not, as these units are considered non-revenue, and it's already budgeted and approved for through the management agreement. Would you like me to go through the actual policy? It is attached.
I think that we could probably read that ourselves. Unless there's anyone wants it to be read to them.
The questions were,
So that's great. Can we have a motion for 2024-04?
I'll move resolution 2024-04.
Second?
It's been moved by Commissioner Hidalgo Ferry, seconded by Commissioner Martin. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It passes unanimously. Resolution 2024-05, which is to adopt the 2023 CMAP certification. Okay, whoever's is that? That's you.
Yeah. So I'm covering for Tracy. Every year we have to do a Section 8 management assessment. What that is management answer these questions and kind of self-certifies themselves and gives them points. So, if we have a policy for a wait list, if the answer is yes, then we can give ourselves full points. And so there's several questions on the CMAP that she works through and does some testing. So she'll test a certain number of files to see if they pass. The only one that she came where she couldn't give us full points was the HQS inspections. And the three areas that
HQS?
health and safety. Health, quality, and safety. So we do that for every unit every 24 months. So we go into the unit, make sure it meets all the HQS standards, because those can change. If it doesn't and we get a fail, then there's depending on the type of fail, there's a particular turnaround that has to happen. What we were finding when she did her testing was that we had a few areas where people had moved out right when their annual was due. And so then it didn't get done, so that kind of dings us scoring wise. We had issues where somebody was sick at the time of their inspection and we had to reschedule, so we didn't get it within that 24-month period. And then the other thing we found was a systematic issue. There was a permission in our software that allowed our HCB specialists to override it just so they could finish the annual recert. But what we found is they would finish the annual recert and then no inspection would get scheduled. So we've shut that down.
Okay.
They can't do the override anymore, so that's that. At least there's a separate permission for it. So we fixed that. But that was the one thing that she had to score us lower. We're still a high performer. And she submitted what you see today to HUD. And then we get council approval. The auditors will also come in April and do a bunch of testing. They'll pull a bunch of files and they'll test a bunch of the same things that the CMAP certify yourself. They're going to come in and test it and certify as well. And if they have any adjustments, then we have to do that.
So what could you all have done with the health issues of the inspection that was rescheduled until later? Is there anything that can prevent missing that again?
I can't speak to like what she saw or what she tested, but what we did find in the system is that they should be scheduling within the 23rd month so that you have that month gap. So I think what probably was happening is it was so close to the 24 that if you reschedule even a week, you would be over the 24. So we've put in the system 23 so that it actually schedules that on the 23rd month. And then we also found just this week a way to batch those so that she can batch them ahead of time. So it's already in the system and it's ready to go. They weren't batching them before, they were just kind of doing them on a monthly basis, which ones do we need? But we can batch them a year in advance or 2 years in advance. If they've had it that month, then we can batch it for that next period.
And so would that go for the same when someone is moving out as well? How does that work?
That I don't know, because, you know, a lot of the times, we don't even get told they've moved out. We get told when the money gets to the landlord, and the landlord tells us, hey, this person moved out. So by that time, there's that situation going on. And so they could be scheduling an annual inspection, and they don't even know the individual's moved. Because it's their responsibility to let us know they've moved.
Oh.
And so, if they don't let us move, or if they don't tell us, or the landlord doesn't tell us, then we're kind of, there's really no way to fix that issue. and it happens all the time. I can't tell you how many times we're sending money to landlords and then having to pull it back, or they're having to pay us back because the person's already moved, or they're just no longer there, or.
And to give you a sense, I mean, a magnitude, Sandy and I were talking about a different issue, but we average about 10,000 connects and disconnects on the utility every month. So there's a lot of movement in and out of the broader system generally. So if it's happening there, and you just kind of take the percentages and work its way into HCP, we know there's a lot of folks that are doing that. Whether or not they tell us is a different story.
Looking at these ratings, you've done pretty darn well.
Yeah.
That's great. So we need a motion to move resolution 2024-05.
I move 2024-05.
Second.
It's moved by Commissioner McCoy and seconded by Commissioner Yarbrough. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
It may have been 10,000 a year, just under 1,000 a month on the disconnect, but still a lot of volume. It's been a long day.
Tim had a look.
I just imagine 10% of the entire city moving every single month.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Right.
Nobody knowing.
Oh,
It's
it's all our
10,000 a
housing
year,
prices.
1,000 a month. It's
Yeah.
a lot of movement.
Yeah.
Even at about 1,000 a month, that's a lot of movement.
Well, and I look at the ratings that we're receiving now, you know, back when, you know, we had taken over the housing authority in my first few months on council even. And it's just like how much this organization has changed.
We should all have
Thank you.
stars.
Yes, thank you. It's huge, yeah.
Ascended Hover Crossing updates on funding the early childhood education.
So I wanted to talk to you all, if you'll look at in your packet, this spreadsheet, a few things I wanted to, so we're getting to D-Day. And D-Day is going to be May-ish, June-ish in terms of getting the funding. And so when you look at, so we went to DOH for their transformational affordable housing grant. We were requesting $3 million. We put a letter of intent, and we were told not to apply. We asked for $750,000 in worthy cause. We got $150,000. We all talked to you all about the ARPA interest income, putting $525,000 in there. We're still working with both the Colorado Health Foundation and the Longmont Community Foundation. We submitted the application. So the conversations with the Longmont Community Foundation is they want to do it in terms of loans, and that doesn't work with the financing of the building itself, so we're still talking to them about that. And then we're waiting on the Colorado Health Foundation. We're pending response. I think that we hope to have that in April-May timeframe from the Community Foundation. And then we've asked for $300,000 from the Boulder County Sustainability Tax Allocation. That is for the distributed energy resources we're going to put there, but that helps toward the total cost of the project. So it'll go to the early childhood education. So we have a lot of requests out there, but we're really still just waiting to get answers on that. One of the things that we're starting to explore is if we're not able to get the full funding to completely build out the early childhood space, can we get enough funding to core and shell the space and then come back in and build the space as we're able to incrementally step into that project. And so just wanted to let you know we're going to continue working to try to find additional funding that we're going to have. May is really that deadline for us in terms of how it impacts the construction of the project.
So, go ahead, okay. So what can we as commissioners do? I mean, should we start writing letters? Are there, people that you think that would be beneficial for us to reach out to?
Yeah, if you know people that are in the world, that are in the early childhood world and that may be willing to do this, if you can reach out to them, let us know to see who may be interested in. I did actually ping the Stewart Foundation again or late last week, and I think there was an interest in the original, or we didn't hear from them. I was able to talk to Jim Newcomb about this, and I think he's interested in it now. Also because what a lot of people don't know is that property, much of that was actually owned by Lionel Stewart.
Oh.
And so the old radio station in that tower, that's the original tower location. And so that's why when you listen to certain radio stations in Denver and they'll say Denver and Longmont, that's because the tower there. So there is a connection to Lila on this one. So we are,
Cool.
I've got to get Jim some information on this and what we can use. But it really is just helping us find potential revenue sources for this early childhood education center.
So I noticed that the ARPA interest income of $525,000, this is interest off of our original ARPA dollars, so we still have those ARPA dollars. This is just the interest.
We have some of it. This is the interest that we've earned because some of those dollars are allocated to other projects.
Okay.
And so I'm asking for another run on interest again to see what we have available. I may come back to the council that says, can we push more money into the early childhood piece?
Are there any other questions or comments on this? This is really important,
Yeah.
very important for what we need.
And if you remember, the reason why we can't put it as part of the project is because that project is not in a qualified census tract, which means you can't put it in the basis of the project under the tax credits. If it was in a qualified census tract, then you could include it in basis and you could use some of the tax credits to support it. And the reason we're here is because we own the property.
Which makes it affordable to begin with.
Yeah.
Right.
Susie, I liked your Commissioner Rodolfo-Ferring. I liked your ask about what we could do.
Yeah.
Rather than just listening to
Help
you
us
all the
find
time.
money.
What can you do?
Work harder. Talk.
Help us find money.
Yes, yeah. Okay.
Find money.
Find money, yeah. Make some calls.
Right, okay. Any other questions or comments on the Ascent and Home Crossing? Seeing none, we're going to move on to the interim executive director's report, development updates.
So I gave you most of the development updates in terms of where we're sitting. I know I've talked to Erica, we probably are getting close to where we want to schedule a tour. And I'm seeing it both with the advisory board and this board of kind of going through those properties. And I haven't even had a chance to go to Crispin yet to see, other than moving around it, I haven't been in it, so see Crispin. Zinnia, they're getting ready actually to start putting in a lot of the electrical plumbing work in there. We're actually partnering with them. We're running an RFP right now for security services there. part of what we've seen at the suites is that we tried using building attendants and it didn't do what we wanted. We know that security is really important for that facility. Probably more so from the people that, not necessarily the people that live there, but from the people that live there are challenged with other folks that are in the area. And so when we talk about things like folks struggling with recovery and other issues, we know that people are moving around that property that are not the best influences for our residents. And so the security is as much to protect from the outside influences as it is from the inside, more so. Because what we're finding with a lot of the programs we're doing, we're better able to manage the problems internal to the properties. Now, that being said, we still see some significant issues. And it's not just there, we're seeing it in a lot of properties. But we're starting to talk with Element Properties about assisting in some of the funding this year because it's important that they have security once you start putting in the expensive stuff into the units. One of the things that we've seen most apartment construction these days are having to pay for security services during the construction cycle because the amount of theft that we're seeing at all of the properties. Yeah. Where's that? Oh yeah.
Arson
so-
here?
Theft, you name the types of crime, it's just happening.
Yeah. There was an apartment complex that was being built, and this was not an affordable. This was a market rate complex. They lost a year on construction because somebody went in and stole the standpipes for fire service
Oh my God.
out of a lot of the units. And so theft on construction site is really becoming a significant issue for us. And so we're trying to get through the RFP on security to help with the construction of Xenia to make sure we have people there that can monitor that. It's not unique to our projects, it's every
That's, I was
project.
going to say, it's across the nation.
Yeah.
It really is. It's crazy.
We were even finding that after the Marshall fire, that
Yeah.
people who had already been through so much.
And so, yeah, copper, anything steel,
Yes.
you name it. And so we're working through that. Sarah can talk about, we're getting ready to finally, hopefully, implement the cameras, which will be part of the solution. Then, obviously, Ascent is really gearing up to close mid-year and start construction on that. And that's the 1, 2, and 3, 4 bedroom units that we're building. And then we're starting to talk about another project that I'll need to, we're having some meetings to understand the different financing structures and what we can do. I think it actually is probably a better approach for us, but I need to meet with our financial advisors to understand the risk, and then we'll be bringing that back to you all. Long term, it gives us a lot of options that we wouldn't have under other state programs that are really intriguing to me. When we do this, when we look at the development cycle, we're looking at Kendra's fund balance sheet, and we're starting to program in when we need construction to come in and impact fund balance so we can continue to boost fund balance, but it gives us the ability to use the funds when we need to pay for security. We now have money that we can actually tap into to do that versus before when we were looking all over the place and under the cushions for money to be able to find it. We now know that we have a robust enough fund balance to help us deal with different situations. And then also on the development side, really try to target a timeline on the Lodge and the Hardstone until when we can kind of convert out of the 202 program into
Voucher program.
the voucher program. That's probably not going to be 25. I think it's going to be, or 24. It's probably going to be 25 when we can do that based on the workload. I'm going to hit a couple of other points. We were able to hire some positions on the housing side. So Lauren Seeley, who worked for, she's actually on the advisory board, but who worked for Boulder County Housing Partners, has accepted the assistant director role, and then Christy Weissman has accepted the other housing role. So we are now pretty well staffed compared to where we were as we're moving forward. A lot of changes right now, just staffing wise in the housing world. Every city's now starting to create housing programs. And so there is a lot of competition for positions in terms of the amount of jobs that are being posted for housing. And it's pretty cutthroat right now.
I think it's good to have hired the Boulder County housing person, because that knowledge that she would bring as to what's going on in the county and what's available in the county is very, very helpful. Hopefully.
No, that's part of understanding the backdrop and what's behind it. And so, and then as part of that, Molly and I participated in conversations with a group on the housing side related to the affordable and attainable housing tax, and are starting to throw how we think the money should be divided, and really wanting to replicate what we did in flood recovery in terms of how we manage that process. And you know, maybe you allocate some based on per capita, but then you allocate some based on projects. And so I am having some really good conversations with the county staff in terms of how that works. So all moving forward, and just know, I mean, people are cherry picking our staff when they get a chance. On the housing side especially. Well, all over, but the housing, it kind of hit us like a ton of bricks. I mean, it was like boom, boom, and we were
That's what happens when you're really good at what you do. And move
good
forward.
people, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, that was good. Update on operations, occupancy report.
Let's see, we did have a drop in occupancy. A lot of that is based at the suites. We did have 4 evictions in January that were executed. They were granted in November and December, but we were able to have the sheriff come out and execute those, so that did cause a drop in occupancy. But we do have 4 pending move-ins right now, waiting for those units just to be made rent ready, so we can get those people in pretty quickly.
Can I ask a question on the evictions? Is this new bill, if it passes, going to be a problem for the suites or any of the affordable housing units?
So probably the good news about not taking a position is it's being amended like crazy right now.
I assumed it would be.
And so I got the updated version, at least of where it stands today. And there's some really good things that they're starting to change into it. And so Sandy and I are scheduled to get together hopefully later this week and bring that back to council. But many of the, so we had some folks from East Boulder, Echo, East County Housing, that were, well, we don't understand it, and I get their perspective. What we were really cluing in is it's the unintended consequences on the broader, affordable, attainable housing stock that we were concerned with. And so a preliminary look at many of those things I think are being addressed in terms of you, instead of saying you can't evict or you can't adjust the lease or do things, they're now saying you can, but you just need to give them 90 days to find a new place to live. So they're starting to bridge the unintended consequences that we were seeing. They're talking about the quality of life, you know, what do they call it? We have it in our lease. The quiet enjoyment of property. They're starting to bring some of those components into it to really reinforce it. But, you know, operationally, where it would have impacted us is that, and where it was impacting all landlords, is it was going to force us to go eviction only versus what we currently do is we negotiate and mediate a lot of settlements before we go into eviction. And why that's important is because when you go through the eviction process, that's down the road.
Right.
And then people can't find a place to live. And that was our worst fear. But we will be bringing that back to you. But it looks like it's in a better shape, but we have to dive into it.
I do have a lingering fear about if you no longer qualify for the deed restriction. So like if your income raises to the point where you no longer, what we do with that.
And that, yeah, that's.
which might just be we have to pay. So there didn't seem like there was a full-blown exemption for housing authorities for that. But I don't know if that's been changed.
I don't, and that's a conflict with HUD. So, you know, the state, they're trying to say, well, you need to do this if you no longer qualify financially, and if you have project-based vouchers on that particular unit, or you have tax credit issues, then there's a conflict point, and then I don't know that the state can do that, override HUD requirements.
That's why I asked that question too, about her. Yeah, that's why I was like, I'm a little confused about that.
Well,
Yeah.
it could limit the funding coming in. So there's still a lot more work to do on it, but they are making adjustments.
Sorry to interrupt.
Don't have really much more updates on that. We are moving through some of these meth units. He did talk about the meth contamination company we found. We have our second unit in testing right now that we typically would have had to rip out drywall and part of the bathroom, but we are very hopeful. It looks like they will be able to clean it with their system where we don't have to rip out.
Oh,
So that unit will be offline a lot less than previous.
and less expensive.
A lot less, especially. It actually came in, we had 3 bids, and including this new company, and they were actually the lowest bid, with the lowest turnaround time.
And you didn't have the demolition and the replacement.
For Diane's information, can you say once again the amount that it costs to remediate, fully remediate? Well, what's the highest, give us the highest and the lowest.
Most of
that you
them
can
cost about, I would say 120,000 is probably on average.
For a 1-bedroom unit.
We've seen something close to 200 on one, didn't we?
Grind the concrete down.
Yeah, I think it was.
That was,
That was a while ago. I remember those numbers.
Good, we're
The
not approaching
demolition's 100, and, you know, when you do typical demolition, I would say between 120 and 150. You can see it go as high as 200, and even the cleanings are like 10 to 20. So,
And your new system is running to about 30 or 50? or
no,
less
well,
than
the unit they're testing right now is a 1-bedroom. Typically for a unit testing the same, we would have spent 20 to 30,000 on demo. They are saying the bid was 8,000, just over 8,000.
quite a savings.
That's why we're doing the meth detecting, right?
That on top of this new company.
so part of it is what so you know what you know on meth remediation. And it was really Doug Spite that introduced us to this company because they've been doing it in the Springs and Pueblo for a long period of time. And they use some technology that's part fire, smoke removal, meth removal, and so they've combined this process. What we didn't know is a lot of times the companies that were coming in were saying, here's the bid, but then they were just saying, you can't clean it, we're going to demo it, we're going to remove it, which was then adding to the cost. This company's like, yeah, we don't have to do that. And we even gave them examples of where people were essentially condemning air conditioners and heaters. And they're like, yeah, we've got a spot where we take and clean it. So it's a paradigm shift in the market in northern Colorado. They're actually moving, they're going to open a location in Longmont. So we're testing them because at a certain point, if we find that this works, and you don't have to go through all that demolition, like the individual that came to council who
Yes.
had that huge expense, we're going to start saying, here, we can't recommend, but we can say, here's our experience as a housing authority, because that really could be a game changer for the naturally occurring affordable attainable housing that we have in our community.
Are they moving Longmont because it's centrally located?
They're expanding north.
I just wanted to hear that they were expanding.
They have an
Not
office in
because they
Greenville.
thought, wow, we've got a great market here.
No, they're there, you're right, they have an office in Greeley, and then they kind of want to get this area in the front range. So like Greeley will probably take Fort Collins and maybe Loveland. We'll take, probably as far south Lakewood. up to this area, and they just have a different model.
We're currently pending the retesting results, so.
If it doesn't work, we'll all sigh and then try to find a different, but, fingers crossed, we're hopeful.
It's even blown our testing company was amazed at what they could do on a low level unit, and as fast as they could turn it around and get it cleaned and back to us. And it's saving my staff a lot of work, because we're used to getting these units back after just being clean with all the texturing taken off the wall, the paint being, that's what they have to do, is remove all that film. And we're getting these units back where we can turn them over in 2 to 3 days, because the texture's not taken off the walls. We don't have to go back and texture paint and everything. It's just a touch-up paint and light maintenance and get it back on the market. So.
Right.
So to give you an example, it's not only the cost of the remediation, it's the loss of revenue. Well, you can't put someone in, and some of these have been a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're good. So is that your occupancy report?
Yes.
Okay, let's go on to the fourth quarter accounts receivables.
So in September of 2023, we owed about, or we had about $68,000 on our accounts receivable. Of that, about $27,000 was reduced in December, but a lot of that was due to the past due balances. So it's the past due balances moving through the 30-day, 60-day, 90-day transition, not getting a prepayment plan, and sending them over to collections and writing them off. What I notice on a monthly basis is it's random tenants here and there. So this tenant in January might not be able to pay, but gets cashed up in February. So the current tenant balances didn't really fluctuate as much. There was $9,000 owed in September, $10,000 owed in December. So it's going to be that fluctuation depending on when evictions happen and where tenants are at in the process. But there's nothing that's like red flag. It's just the evictions take longer. And so if the person's not paying, you're just accumulating more of those costs to write off. We've put about over $400,000 to collections, and we have not seen anything from that. So I don't know that we ever will, but we're kind of monitoring that to see how much administration work that is to send it to collections if nothing's happening on both sides.
Speaking of evictions, I forgot to, so in the advisory board, you all appointed an advisory board member who's a mediator as well. Now, obviously, he doesn't handle anything that's on the housing authority side. The one thing that was really interesting that he mentioned to me is rarely do we evict for failure to pay, because we're able to work with folks. And again, the most important thing is keeping people housed. And so we work with folks in different ways, or we have a mutual rescission to where they can't pay and we don't have to evict. What shocked me is he goes, when I see the housing authority on the docket, because these are significant issues. He goes, when I see everybody else that's on the docket, he goes, it's more minor issues and failure to pay and things like that. So for me, that was really reaffirming, and that the work that we're doing, where the rubber meets the road and working with our tenants, is that our managers are working at a different level. And to kind of give you a sense of what we're challenged with and where we're trying to think is, when we look just generally at problem properties, and Sarah can talk about this, the manager is the key to that. Whether it's a private multifamily property or it's a public affordable, your managers will dictate how those properties really function as part of the broader community. And we're going to think about how we can start talking to folks, and she can get into that in her report.
Okay. Was that it? Okay. And I think do the fourth quarter annual financials as well.
So I'll just kind of go over some highlights. If there's any questions, just let me know. But what I did try to do is highlight kind of the problem areas for each property. Our biggest problem area was our vacancies. That was the most over budget we were on most of our properties, and a lot of it's due to either meth units that have been vacant for a very long time. There's several of them that are that way. We also have issues with getting our 50 and 60% units housed. We've done a lot of calls, and it wasn't affordable for the people that were on our wait list. They needed something that was 30 or 40. And that was, AMSA was one of those big issues, is that we couldn't get those ones housed. And I think this month we had 4 vacants for that one. So, I mean, we're already starting the year off with some pretty large vacancies. But hopefully we're on the path. We tried, so we go with the wait list, but then if we don't have anybody on the wait list, we've started outsourcing into the papers and other agencies to say, hey, we have these units available. And I don't know if you've gotten responses from those or not.
Well, plus we're dealing with the flooring issue, so it's making it harder to rent units because we have bad flooring in the units that we're working through an insurance claim. So I have units with floor peeling, and we've done some patches, but a few of our units are hard to rent.
So the other things you'll see are insurance costs. So you'll have insurance repairs and non-insurance repairs, because as of, if we do have some meth units, if it was claimed before August 31st, then it moves on our old policy, which still had the byproduct coverage. As of September 1st, they took our byproduct coverage away, so we no longer have meth coverage. So any meth units forward going will be a full cost. And most of, like if it costs $120,000 to fix a unit, it would completely deplete our reserve balance for that property.
Yeah, you see, you have an $81,000 one here, $81,370.
So in some cases where we're already strapped, it's, as we met in the neighborhood, we're actually partnering with Habitat for Humanity to come in and help us do some of the work, because that's cutting the expense down in terms of rebuilding the unit.
The other area is bad debt. You'll see some bad debt expense be pretty high. A lot of that is due to meth units, where you increase your revenue by putting on the tenant's ledger to say they owe it, but then you're writing it back off, so it's kind of a wash. But when we don't budget for that high dollar, you're going to see the discrepancy there. And then there are a few properties that have pretty high legal costs, and that's just tenant issues along with evictions. Evictions are costing, way more than it used to. It's a lot harder. So those are the key points of the financials. Do you guys have any questions?
Spring Creek is in a deficit.
They are all pretty much look like they're in a deficit. That's what kind of happens in December. So in December, we record the depreciation.
Okay.
So we record all the non-operating items, which include depreciation for their entire portfolio, along with adding the accrued interest for all the loans that are on the property that are not really actually getting paid back unless you have cash flow, and they're in that cash flow waterfall or close to. But that's just kind of how these LIHTC properties work. And we don't do those till the very year end, because it can skew the financials for the property managers. They may not think they have money, but they actually do. So it's a lot of the non-operating that gets booked, and you'll see probably almost every property looks like they have a net loss. But that's just due to those non-operating transactions.
And so when you all see the budget, you see more of the operating budget, because we're really looking at what do we have available to spend versus bringing the depreciation in, and that's the tax credit component, because that's then when the investor gets that value when it's negative.
It provides the tax loss for them. Is what it provides.
Okay. Public health and safety updates.
I think we have vouchers. Vouchers not listed?
No,
Not listed.
we're good.
So we do have the vouchers. If you guys want to go over. This is, I can do it quick. Yeah. So, so this is our 2-year tool. So we're still kind of in it hasn't crossed over to the new 2-year tool yet, but what we're looking at is by the end of this year, that we're going to have to deplete our vouchers down to about 412. We ended the year at 426, and the reason we're gonna have to reduce is we're gearing up to provide the PBB vouchers for Village Place. Village on Main. We still get caught up with that. So that's kind of where this is at and what this two-year tool does, unless HUD gives us more money, which we won't find that out until March, April timeframe. And if they give us more money, then we might be able to voucher up, but we're at a standstill right now. We won't be able to do any vouchering up, and we're actually counting on our attrition rate, which is we lose anywhere from 3 to 4 vouchers a month. And we're counting on that to be able to add all 18 in October for Village on Main, for the PBBs.
So if there's something that the commissioners can do for us, that is, and we'll bring you back something, but maybe working on our congressional delegation. Maybe talk to HUD about getting us some more funding on the voucher side. Originally, we couldn't do that because our performance was horrible. The performance now, I mean, we're riding the line of fully utilizing the funds within the scope of the 2 years, which is typically an indication to HUD that you need more money. And so we'll get you all that information, especially for those going to national cities that are going to meet with the congressional delegation, is to really kind of talk this up, because I think our performance now speaks for itself. And we need more money, because then as rents go up and we're paying at 105.
Well, fair market rents also, that's another reason that builds
Yeah.
into the equation. The fair market rents went almost $200 per unit per month.
Not to
So as
sound
we start to see that, it's gonna.
too Reagan-esque, but could you make it one page so that we can quickly, briefly give them that specific, so that they, because he's known for being very brief with his data.
I asked for the same thing.
It was effective.
Oh, we might say at times.
So this was the first year we actually tapped into our reserves, about $150,000. Prior years, we had not tapped into barely any of it. So this is we definitely vouchered up. But now it's like you play the game.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
Yeah, we need our reserves. Is there any specific type of vouchers, or does it matter?
Just the
Housing choice vouchers.
housing choice vouchers,
Yes. And the more vouchers we increase, the more PDVs we can offer too, because it's based off of a percentage. So we're going to be pretty capped out on PDVs. So if any other agencies come to us, we won't be able to offer PDV vouchers, because we're going to be capped unless they give us more vouchers.
And to a certain extent, that may be part of the conversation we have with the county associated with the broader housing project, because we know about 50% of their vouchers are in Longmont, which is roughly 400.
Oh no, they have double the funding we do, so they probably have double the vouchers. We're at 512, they maybe have 1,000.
And about 50% of the 1,000 are here. So maybe we start talking to the county about getting some of their project-based voucher capacity to help with some of our projects. So we'll be bringing that back to you all. And I've mentioned it, they don't like that idea. But
No,
my
I
point is-
imagine they wouldn't.
But my point is, I mean, if we're incurring, if they're here and we're incurring the broader expenses associated with it, then I think there needs to be some recognition of that for Longmont.
Well, are they giving the PBVs to other cities in the county,
I
do
don't
you
know if
know?
they're using them or not.
Because I don't think they have that many projects going in Boulder.
Just Willoughby, well, the county, I think the only big project they have is Willoughby Corner right now. And they're having their own, I think they're having their own issues and projects and ongoing expenses. And so, I think it's just a good conversation.
Yeah, it is. Okay.
All right.
Take it away.
So we are this close to purchasing our camera equipment. we're literally just, Tracy's been out for a little bit, so we're waiting for a few things for her to shore up, and we'll be purchasing our camera equipment. And we are purchasing, I think, maybe we mentioned this last time, maybe not, maybe it's new, but we are purchasing 2 meth detectors to put at 2 of our properties that we know have really good signal strength. That'll be Village on Main and the Hearthstone. I was out at both properties today, and we're getting very good signal strength at both. So that is the update for the 2, and that means we're still really in the testing process. Like, we know they work. We want to verify that this is the issue, that it be the carrier, a connectivity issue. As Harold had mentioned, we are moving forward with getting that security contract done. We submitted that to procurement today, and we should have an answer by the end of the week, I would expect. So we'll be moving forward with that, which will definitely help the other things we're talking about at Zinnia.
And then as they get the cameras, which is, there's another piece to that we're trying to solve under federal procurement rules for the video management system, but then the security company, while they're at the suites in Zinnia, they will have access to the cameras at the other properties. So they're going to be managing and looking at those cameras at night. So instead of having them physically leave, they're going to be managing
All the
overall
properties,
security on all the properties.
That's great.
Very beneficial. Then as far as resident updates go, it's been the Q word, as I've been saying this week. We had a few, well, I guess, thanks to Lisa talking to MHP quite a bit, they definitely stepped up to working more with the residents that we're seeing significant calls for service on. So they're coming to the table, which is about time. So we also have that ROI that has been worked on for months by Andy Feaster, going out to the hospitals, getting the school district, like you name it, that it's listed on there for an ROI. So we can really wrap around these folks that are having significant issues. And then lastly, Harold had mentioned, we had briefly talked today about, what can we do, and I have to say this, and I'm not saying because I'm sitting here, but the reason why we do not see the issues at the management level is because of the managers we have and the quality of the people that are working for LHA. Across our community, I can honestly tell you, we've had some significant issues in the last 6 months to a year with having no managers on site because it's a very transitory, like I've been doing this for a very long time, and I end up seeing managers bounce around like, oh, hey, it's good to see you at this place now. But literally, they'll not have managers for a year on property. And that is caused some other definite issues in these other huge apartment communities here in Longmont. So moving forward, I'm brainstorming with Dave Kennedy on how we can literally go, when we know there's no manager for a significant amount of time, and even be more preventative in the fact that if we know we're going to have some absence, what can we do, going to the regional corporate level for some of these folks. We don't have these problems when we have a local, not necessarily live local, but if we have someone in Colorado, say they live in Broomfield and they own property here in Longmont, we do not see those issues. It's these corporate level that cannot maintain their staff. So we are wanting to look at that at a more broad level because it's affecting the rest of our community. But for LHA, we're doing very well, minus one manager, but we're going to get back in the game and ensure we have a quality person take over that spot that can handle that work.
So maybe planning and zoning should not okay any property that does not have a local manager.
Well, hey, I don't know if you can do that. But I think, what when we're kind of talking about this, because what's interesting is when we look at, and it's a deviation, but it's connected. When we look at hotels that we're having problems with, or in multifamily units we're having problems with, the common denominator is that. And so, as a council, we'll probably have a study session on something that deals with hotels that kind of lets us attack that a little bit. What Sarah doesn't know is when she left my office, I started wondering, could we do something similar on multifamily environments based on if we're seeing an excessive number of calls for service, in terms of, is there something that we can do there that can put more emphasis on the owners to start engaging on the problem versus it just being a public safety response or whatever it is. And so,
Which, oh my gosh, Ben, I mean, the amount of condemnations right now that code has around our communities is huge, so it would definitely, talking about staff, right?
yeah, if you think the meth issue that we're talking about exists all over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
You know, I think that I may have missed this, but we all got a bar L is closing with a big confidential across the top. And then there was nothing more said. What happened?
We have not heard, I'm working very closely with Bar L, Super 8, and Lamplighter, and we have not heard back from Bar L. I do know that the owner he got his own, I can't even remember the term, but help me out here, the certified hygienist, thank you. I guess his son is in a restoration business, so he and his son are working on it, and code enforcement or public safety have heard back from John. We're expecting to hear back. It's still fenced off.
So we don't know.
Don't know.
So, one of their employees who was either, and I can't remember, he was either a security guard for Bar L. And
Mayor,
yes, no talking.
later.
Later,
Yeah. So no news on Bar L.
no news. I know nothing.
We're just waiting.
Yeah, we'll chat about that.
Yes, a lot of people care about those and keep asking.
Got it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we want to make sure that the parentheses haven't been dropped.
No, and before any, I mean, we go through the same thing. Before you can reoccupy any of these facilities, it has to be okay by Boulder County Health.
Yeah.
And there's been times we've had to retest and stuff.
So not.
Any other questions for me?
Well, I guess just to close my parenthesis, so the answer is we don't know anything because it was confidential that they were closed for health reasons.
It was posted publicly.
Was it?
It was posted publicly by Boulder County Health. So Boulder County Health is really the entity that condemns. We, as a partnership with Dane, post the condemnation, but Boulder County Health is the one that controls that side of it.
Is that the end of the, okay. Learned a lot that I can't say. So do we have any commissioner comments?
We move we adjourn.
Okay, it's moved by Commissioner McCoy that we adjourn. Seconded by Commissioner Martin. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Did you see Faye's email?
I did.
I did say Friday at 10.